Welcome to the Resilience Sucks podcast, brought to you by the Adaptability Movement. I'm Ben.
And I'm Dan.
And we're here to give you resources and tools to help you go from a state of surviving to thriving in life.
Resilience sucks the life out of you. And while it's a necessary skill, it's one that we don't want to spend too much time in or we run out of capacity. We're here to talk to you more about how to adapt and find the opportunity in change so you can really go about thriving in your own life.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Pool Compliance Adelaide. Pool Compliance Adelaide has a simple mission: to provide professional advice and photographic proof that your pool complies with the relevant state statutory requirements. If you're buying, renting, or even selling a property, make sure your pool is compliant with Pool Compliance Adelaide.
All right, welcome Clifford Maina. Mate, we met through the Australian Athletics Centre. We co-presented a few months back now. A lot to do with that sort of whole well-being topic. And we absolutely just thought you'd be a great guest to get on the podcast. You got a lot of value to share with listeners. So can we just start by having you kind of introduce yourself a little bit to the audience?
Yeah. So my name is Cliff. I guess I used to be a soccer player. I guess that's probably the best place to start. Played here in SA, played a little bit in the States as well. And then kind of just play semi-professionally now here in SA, studying psychology. So that's where a lot of my time is spent, outside of football, outside of soccer. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, like we said, we met, I think it was early last year, or later last year actually, or early this year, I can't remember. But we just spoke about wellness and stuff, and we just connected, and it's been good chatting to you guys, I guess, sort of periodically, but it's been good to kind of do it in a formal setting, which is and then help you guys in your podcast.
Terrific. And we got Ben joining us today for the first time as well. So obviously co-founder of the Adaptability Movement. And I guess I just saw the opportunity to have a bit more of a broader conversation, given that you're not just an athlete, you're not just someone studying psychology, like you're someone that's kind of got different perspectives on this issue. And Ben being someone who offers a huge amount of value in this as well. I just wanted to try and tease out a little bit of that, that value that you have to share from different perspectives. So tell us more about, so you are going down that psychology pathway, but what is it that draws you to that sort of mental health wellbeing space?
I think my time as an athlete probably has most to do with it. I think it's a pretty ruthless, environment. It's not very psychologically safe. I know that's a big kind of buzzword at the moment, psychological safety, but it's not. The reality is it's a tough place to be in. It can really throw you in a spin sort of mentally. So for me, I think coming out of my experience as an athlete, it just started off as an interest really. I was more interested in the science of it. I come from exercise science background, so the sort of the nitty-gritty science of it is something that appealed to me, and kind of thinking about it more, actually during COVID is when I really started to knuckle down a little bit during that downtime, to really understand psychology at a deeper level. I found that it kind of underlies a lot of things that happen in the real world, whether it be like business or interpersonal relationships and stuff. Understanding those concepts, I think, was really important to me, and then it just kind of stemmed into actual study, and then now I'm doing a doctorate, so it's kind of evolved in an interesting way. But I think what I love about psychology is that there is, and this is what we spoke about, when we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, is the mind and body connection is just so deep and deep seated in our experience as humans. I think what psychology doesn't do a great job of is it feeds great into this idea that your mind affects your body, but it doesn't quite do the same. It doesn't do the reverse order. Sure. The same kind of. It doesn't advocate for it as much, and I think that's where, obviously coming from my exercise science background, I find value in the reverse. Sometimes your mentality and what's happening mentally can affect your body, but there's things you can do at a body level to kind of help with the reverse. So that's where a lot of my studies focused on, and where I see the potential to be a really game changer for a lot of people. It's just to really clearly define what the reverse relationship is like between body and mind.
Sure. And like when we spoke about this, we talked about, I think I actually shared an example of when I was younger and first starting out in professional sport, and my idea of stress and mental health at that point was, well, I need to, okay, I'm overwhelmed, I need to go get a massage to relieve some of that overwhelm. And to me, having a much broader understanding of it now is that there's kind of these different sources of stress, and we've kind of got that, you're kind of like a physical, a chemical, and a mental, emotional sort of source of it. And understanding where the primary source is, but also acknowledging that we can use any one of those areas to relieve some of that burden to make it easier to address whatever that primary source is as well. So when you talk about that flow back and forth between those two, I almost think there's like a triangle of flow through that, and if we can kind of balance that in a way to be able to alleviate and regenerate and give ourselves more opportunity to be able to face the things that we need to overcome, deal with, whatever it is, rather than going straight up and going, oh, that's the thing I need to address, like smack bang in my face. And now all I do is feel more overwhelmed because it just feels like a chore, it feels hard. Like add some context, Ben, like what do you feel?
Yeah, I really resonate with what you were saying about, I guess, how you became to be interested in psychology in terms of through sport and really understanding the sport psychology first. Because I was talking to someone the other day, and we were speaking about how traditionally in sport, if you have a sports psychologist or whatever, all their job is to focus on getting you better at that sport, and they think about, here's some goal setting things, here's some mindfulness things around how you can visualize better your sport, but then they don't actually take into account the rest of your life, and it's all about, all right, well, what's going to make you play better in terms of the sporting stuff, but actually in reality, if the rest of your life is out of balance, then that can affect your sporting life. And that's something that we speak about here lots, is that you have all these different areas of your lives. We usually speak about 4 different areas, but if you're going well in 3 of them, but one of them's not going so well, that one area has the capacity to pull all those other areas down. And it's not about constantly maintaining like amazing levels of all 4 of them. It's like, how can we stop the big fluctuations in going from really highs to really lows in these different areas, and making sure that we can stay in that middle level as much as we can, so that we can continue to perform, whether it's work, school, family life, in all those different areas, to make sure that we're really able to perform at our best as much as we can in those areas.
Yeah, I think the reality is it's not a very clear balance of all the areas. So however you want to split up your life in the different sort of categories you want to do it with, it doesn't really matter. But the reality is that you can't balance all the areas, and all the areas are going to be in different levels of flux in any given point in time. I think the reality is that those things have a huge interplay with each other, right? Like, if you just speaking from my experience as an athlete, you got stuff going on at home, you're just not going to be able to perform well on the field. And
or you might be able to for a short period of time, but then eventually it's going to catch up with you.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of things in life you can get away with instantaneously.
Yeah.
But if you really want to buy in, it's got to be sustainable, and it's got to be something that happens over a long period of time, right? So I guess what the aim should be is to try to create sustainable change, or something that's sustainable in its structure. Mm-hmm. And all those things kind of interplay with each other in such a way that it makes one not being reached to its full potential really impacts the others. And there is a balance, and it's a delicate balance. Mm-hmm. But I think there's so much, and this is true in the psychology world, there's so much, and we were just speaking about this earlier, there's so much of this, one is really struggling, I really got to wrench it back, and I really want to get it back. So let's just say, for example, I'm just emotionally just dysregulated, right? I'm just struggling to control my emotions on a day-to-day basis. Traditional kind of psychology in this way goes, we need to get you back into that sort of sweet spot. Yeah. And what it does, I think it kind of, number one, it reduces your self-efficacy. You don't feel like you're in charge of something. I think that's really important as well. And if you don't feel like you're in charge of something, then you always kind of got to be seeking things externally, and it creates a very, very maladaptive power imbalance, where you might be going only to see this person because they're the person that helps you with this type of thing. There's so many of these aspects that you can actually impact. The same way that when one thing is bad, everything is bad. I think it's the reverse is true. Like if one thing starts to flip, the narrative, everything kind of gets better. And I think there's so much emphasis based on, I think the emphasis is just shifted. It's in the wrong direction. I think you need as an individual living in this kind of system that you have different things, that people around you, different institutions and stuff. I think you need to position yourself in a place where there are things that you can actively control. There are things that they're not in your control, but there's things that you can actively control, and you should use that to try to shift that tide over and create a net positive amongst all those different things. I think that's where my perspective comes from is, we spoke about this a lot. We even spoke about food, for example. Yeah. Something as simple as food, like, bar anything kind of, something, a disease or something. Or if you and yourself, maybe you don't have the capacity to get good food, but getting good food is something that's so simple and changes just how you feel, it changes everything about it. And if that's the one thing that kind of shifts the tide across, then that's one thing you can't control.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I was speaking to you the other day about this video that I watched about two guys, one ate healthy for 7 days and one ate all junk food for 7 days. Yeah. And the difference in like their mentality and their energy levels and all that sort of stuff from something just as simple as food, it was crazy. Like there was this one guy who normally was this vibrant, like really sort of aware or like alert kind of guy, and he just went downhill because he ate this terrible diet. And it just shows like you think about like a car. It's like, if you put diesel in a petrol car, it's not going to work, is it? So it's like, or if you put the wrong stuff in it, it might work okay, but it's in terms of the capacity, where like you might only be working at 20% of your actual capacity.
And this goes back to the thing you said about in the short term, it can change. Like if you have some guy at home, you can have a great game on Saturday. Yeah. But if you want to create like a sustainable, so if you want to have a good season, stuff at home is going to impact you on the field as well. So like put diesel and petrol, it might go a little bit, but it's not going to go rain, hail, shine, 365 days a year. So I think it's gone back to the idea of being trying to create sustainable change, and something as simple as nutrition is just an example. For example, like nutrition is just an example of something that you can impact. I've been experimenting with energy control and how I manipulate my levels of energy throughout the day to help. I have a lot of issues in terms of controlling anxiety. I have a lot. Obviously, I'm working and I'm studying and I play football and stuff like that. So it can get quite a lot, and managing that is a challenge. But what I've been doing recently is just trying to, modulate my energy, because if I know for me, for example, and this is just from my own self-awareness, is if I have a lot of energy, I tend to be more anxious. Like the anxiety for me feeds off of whatever energy that I have available there. So if I really deprive my anxiety of energy, if I do a lot of stuff throughout the day, get up early, go for runs, exercise my brain, if I do a lot of things, then my anxiety doesn't really have a chance to latch on to something. Whereas if I'm super idle, mine is hanging out, and I've got a quiet day or something, my anxiety just kicks in because it's got so much to sort of work with. But that's something that's simple. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about things you can modulate to try to shift it across.
So how do you do that? Is it the type of thing like that, all right, in the mornings you have more energy, so you do something more in the mornings, or is it just based on how you're feeling at that time?
I'm still experimenting with this. It's a bit of a tango. So I find that if I overcorrect and I'm too overtired, I don't have enough energy, I get anxious as well. Yeah. So it's not really like a cut and dry thing. So I need to find this kind of middle period. If I find myself, and I think the hard part is that you have a day and you feel like, that was a productive day, it was a good day, I wasn't so anxious, or, and you start thinking, what did I do? How was it? I try to use that as an example, and you try to sort of copy paste, do another iteration of the experiment. It doesn't work every time, but I think what I'm coming close to understanding is that I map things out on a 2 to 3 day cycle. That kind of is where it works for me, kind of like half a week. And I can if I plan out what it looks like for me for the next 2 or 3 days, I see where there's potential for me to kind of go a little bit off the rails in terms of my anxiety. I've got a really big assignment coming up, or I need to have these kind of meetings at work. Yeah. And these are the areas that I can see for while I'm going to be anxious there. what can I do around those areas to try to mitigate that? Oh, I can see in the next 2 or 3 day cycle that I'm going to be a bit overtired, and that's another example of maybe where anxiety can come in. So I need to reverse it. So like energy control, I think it's like I use the analogy like a thermostat. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to get back into that middle period. So that's something that would speak about like practical things that you can kind of do to shift. Like your well-being in general. You have all these different things. It extends to even seeing people. Like I'm an introvert by nature, but I know sometimes why looking at my week, I'm going to maybe need a little bit of mum or dad. I'm going to be a little bit of this mate or that person to try to pull me back into balance. It's all come from a place of like being really self-aware, which everyone's not there, and you kind of need to do a little bit of graft to get there. But I think there's huge scope for people trying to get actionable, practical things to try to shift that new. Because I think there's a mentality, and we were just speaking about this earlier. There's a mentality of things are outside of my control. There is a mentality that you need a fix all or a cure all, which is the case. If you're really, really struggling and you need something to just get you, in and out of bed or something like that, there's a case for that. But in general, most people have this mentality. It's not really warranted. It's not really based on anything. So what I'm trying to do, I think, in my own kind of personal practice as well as kind of like my professional and research work is what can you do practically to swing things kind of more in your favor. I think energy control is something that it's something that I'm going to continue to work with because it's something that I've become more aware of lately, and it's something that I think can really help people. And in my own practice, even just trying to experiment with it and see how it helps me could be something. But just another thing that you can control, and it swings everything in your favour. So
yeah, for sure. And like the concept you sort of talk about, to us, we put a huge emphasis on regeneration. Yeah. So being an early step in that intervention process, so that it's like if you've reached an emotional peak, then now is not time to bombard you with new information, new skills, like all of this kind of what might be considered work. It's the time to sort of actually pause, stop, reflect, like just kind of get grounded again, like to be able to feel that sense of settled within your nervous system. And then once you get that, there's a broader kind of view you can take of things, isn't there, where you can start to go, okay, well, this is where I am. Like I either accept that or I don't. This is what's available to me, and this is where my opportunities might lie to be able to then move forward in a more balanced way, in a way that serves me, rather than diminishing myself again. So you talked earlier about that net effect, and that's something we use regularly because oftentimes people are they're really attached to all the good stuff they do, and it's like I do this, I eat well, or I get up early and I get enough sleep, and it's like. And that's great, like you should absolutely celebrate that and reward yourself for it, but have some awareness, you talked about self-awareness as well, of what else is influencing that situation. So if we're nourishing ourselves, then that's great that you're eating well and you're sleeping well, but if you haven't been drinking enough good quality clean water throughout the day, well then you're going to be dehydrated. That's going to have an impact on your system. If you're not removing toxic sort of influences in your life, whether they be chemical, whether they be people, whether they be something else, you have to rebalance things in a way that you can nourish, calm things down to then be able to push forward. And I think that plays to what you're saying about, right, like in terms of that two-way flow. Like if you're only addressing one aspect of the stress in your life, then we're going to go through this boom-bust cycle over and over again, because we go, cause, quick solution, cause, quick solution, and it's like a freaking yo-yo, because you haven't adapted. There you go, play on words, the adaptability movement. But you haven't adapted to the situation. All you've done is looked for the quickest way to stop the flow, so that you can then bucket out a few litres of water out of the leaky boat, rather than actually like thinking, okay, what's the foundations, or what's the structure of this craft? How do I create something which sustainably makes me better equipped to be able to deal with the environment that I'm in?
Yeah, I think that last little bit you said about being sustainable, I think that's kind of what it's all about. I think there is I'm not going to say there's no room for quick fixes. I think there is. If you're really, really, really struggling and you just need something to get you back, you know what I mean? You need to bail you out. That's fine. There's something scope for that. But I think in the context that we're talking about, you're trying to create sustainable change over a long period of time. I'm talking about years here. So I think that's good to maybe have that different perspective of what is sustainable, what sort of impact can I have that's sustainable, and what isn't. And I think starting from that position of being really grounded, it starts with a little bit of like self-awareness, and that's a difficult journey for people to go on, because it means that you have to acknowledge, you know, your shortcomings. You have to really rely on other people around you to give you a different perspective, and it's a difficult kind of journey to go on, and it's got huge benefits because you can really see things in a different level, personally, and then also changes the lens of which you see the world.
How do you, I guess, for someone who's listening and has no idea how to start that, like what's the first step that you can take in order to start becoming more self-aware?
Can I even go one step back before that? Sorry to interrupt, but like absolutely valid question. But if you haven't got self-awareness, like maybe let's give an example of someone in that situation, because you might not even know it's you, right? So you might think that, you know, yeah, right. So
you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. So like we're talking about that person who, and there's a risk that I might offend some people here, and like at the risk of saying so be it. Like my intention is actually to help develop more awareness and help develop more well-being and meaningfulness in your life, right? So I'm thinking of that person that is like, you know, they go to their 9 to 5 or they go to their job, which they're not super satisfied about, right? You know, every time they get to the weekend, it's relief. Every time they get to sort of Sunday afternoon, they're like, oh no, I've only got a few hours left of freedom before I return to
Sunday scaries.
Yeah, right. And so they're the sort of person that's like, you know what, like I could go to bed earlier. I could, like, you know, fold up the washing and put it away and be more prepared for the week. The sustainable thing, the sustainable habit, which buys me more capacity throughout the week. But actually, maybe I'll just go catch those other 3 episodes of The Office or something else, right? And yeah, okay, yes, you technically switched off, like you removed yourself from your current environment in a way that gave you a chop out, like, but it's not sustainable, and it's not really nourishing. It's a distraction, much the same way as pulling out your phone and scrolling through social media. And we hear this over and over again, and people are like, yeah. And everyone gets it. Intuitively, we know that this isn't good for us, right?
Yeah.
But we do it anyway. So why do we do it? Because we're actually, my personal opinion is we're so fearful of being with ourselves, of actually pulling back from the situation we're in, because then we have to then confront some of this stuff you're talking about. And I think people haven't even tried. They've just gone, I'm not ready for that. And so intuitively know we need to get there eventually to feel balance and well-being in our life, but we're delaying it and we're distracting ourselves to push on the same path we're on, which isn't actually satisfying us. So now hopefully some people have resonated with that situation. I'm talking about people, you know, it could be Netflix, it could be social media, it could be coffee, it could be correct, right? So then, you know, if you're listening to this and you're feeling like, oh, that might be me, I'm not sure if I want to go there or not, you know, pause it if you need to, come back to it. But we're about to talk more about how we can start introducing that in a way that doesn't feel as overwhelming, and you know, we're trying to stop suppressing it and start to go, how can we just let off the pressure valve a little bit? How can we create a little bit more calmness? Right.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not an authority on this by any means, and I research in this area and stuff, but I'm nowhere near the level to be able to prescribe anything. I guess all I can say to kind of your first question, Ben, is I can only speak from my experience about what helped me getting self-aware. And I think a couple of things I think that, and I appreciate what you said, Dan, because it's like, it looks different for different people, and it does different, it fits a different hole for every different person, you know what I mean? So it's just very context dependent, it's very individual. My journey with self-awareness, and that's all I can kind of speak to, is I've had a lot of really good people kind of in my corner that have jarred me back into coherence, basically. I think I was, just this week actually, literally just this week, I had an experience where I thought, I'll give you a bit of context, it was a friend of mine, and they felt like they were disrespected in the friendship, and I had no awareness that my interaction with this person made them feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's just a perfect example of, although I'm coming from a posture that I do want to get better and I do want to improve in this area of my life, which kind of helps me see these things. But this person really threw me back into reality and said, like, you think you're being a good friend, but you're actually not. It's difficult and it's a tough thing to kind of get your head around. How do you start that self-awareness journey? I think what I benefited from in my self-awareness journey was, talk about being willing and being able. I wasn't able to be self-aware at the start, but I was willing. And that kind of got me across the line until I built my capacity to be self-aware. I really wanted to improve that part of my life. I felt like there was value there. And I think this comes back to kind of, I don't want to sound theoretical, but behavior change models. A lot of them are based on the person understanding that there's value in changing their behavior. So if you talk about something like self-awareness and how do I become self-aware, someone that's struggling with becoming self-aware, I guess you really got to go back to, do they even understand that it's a thing that is positive for them? Do they comprehend that this is something that is beneficial for them? I did, and I think that opened up that kind of journey, that started that journey. I really wanted to be a better communicator. I wanted to be better in relationships, and I wanted to be better in my work professionally and in my research and things like that. I really wanted to do that, and I knew that self-awareness is a huge step in that direction. I didn't have the skills at the start. Developed the skills along the way, but I had the will at the start to really want to be better. And I think that's probably the thing that underpins, like, everyone's self-awareness journey. They want to do it because it's difficult, man. Like, it's not great being told by a friend that you respect that you're not really contributing to this friendship the same way that the way that I need to be, and it's not nice. It's not nice. It's not nice to hear that, and it kind of puts you in this very, very primitive and tribal feeling of kind of being like out of the group and something's been taken away from me. And we was talking about the day about scarcity mindset. In a way, it kind of develops that because something's taken away from you. If this person says, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you're not a good friend, you think, oh no, like, it really kind of triggers something in you. That's not easy. And I think a lot of the self-awareness journey, once you do open up and say, well, I'm willing to be self-aware, and you start that journey, the first step, you're going to get punched in the face because you're going to really sort of come up against things that maybe you knew somewhere deep down subconsciously that it was a shortcoming, but it's being brought right up to the surface, and you have to really like face it head on. And I think starting with that posture of being open to it allows those blows to kind of hit a little, or to lose their impact a little bit. But it still sucks, man. Like, I think it still sucks. Everyone that's kind of had this journey, and I don't know your guys' perspective, but everyone's journey is individual. I don't use the word journey because it's kind of like overplayed a little bit, but when you realise that there is a shortcoming and you have to go kind of through the process of number one, you've got to identify it, and then you have to go on the journey to try to fix it. It's not nice, man. It really isn't nice. Like, it's great to get the products out of it, where you come out of it with that self-awareness and you come out of it with more skills and stuff that's going to feed into the system and give you more self-awareness. It's great, that part of it. But during it, it's difficult, man.
Well, we've, like ourselves within our business and everything, and I guess our friendship, we've done that many times, and whether it's through something like a SWOT analysis or just conversations with each other, there is times where we've gone like, no, like that you're not doing what you said you're doing, or even just brought something up that has been a bit of an issue, because, and again, it's not nice for the person who's bringing it up. It's not nice for the person who's
surging anxiety for me.
Yeah,
it raises that to him.
But in the end, it's going to be better for the relationship and for us individually to talk about that, because if you just sit there and sit on it, or like your friend, if he or she or whoever it was just sat on it and never said anything, then it could get to the point where it becomes a toxic relationship, because he's got this idea in his head and you've got this idea in your head, and then they don't match up. So you got to, again, like, it comes down to communication. Like, communication is a huge thing. It's something that we talk about all the time between ourselves, between people we work with, and between like everyone in our life. It's because we all see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
And if I see there's something in one way, Dan sees something one way, you see something another way, we could have 3 different perspectives, but we could kind of be trying to think like, why isn't Cliff thinking the same way? Like he's not doing this, and we had a similar thing where when we were running workshops, Dan likes to do things a certain way, I like to do things a certain way, and there was this disconnect that we didn't understand each other's way of doing things properly, and therefore Dan was going, oh, Ben's not doing what I want, and I was going, oh, Dan's not like doing what I want, and then it kind of just didn't work, and then a mentor that we have kind of shattered the glass and went and told us like, oh, Ben likes to do things this way, Dan, you like to do things this way, you kind of got to meet in the middle somewhere, so that then it's kind of I was a bit more process driven, Dan was a bit more like
intuitive,
and go with the flow,
ethereal stuff.
It was more, he was more content with sort of reading the room and understanding what was going on and going with the flow of that, where I'm a bit more like, oh, I like to know what we're talking about, when we're talking about, who's talking about it, and all this sort of stuff, and there's positive and negatives to both of them, but I guess we got to find a way that works for both of us, otherwise it's never going to work, because we're always going to be clashing or resentful or anything like that. So.
I read it earlier this week. I read an interesting kind of analysis of what a conflict is. You know, people say that conflict is in and of itself that sort of a way that conflict kind of manifests. But in a way, it's a battle between 2 entities. One of them has to die for another one to kind of come up and take the fall. And I think where conflict resolution and stuff is really difficult for some people is that they don't want to let that thing die. And it kind of rings. And I think, just thinking in my head now, like the connection between that instance there and internally, it's kind of it's a similar battle, because I think that sort of journey of self-awareness, when I started, I had this really clear picture. I thought it was a clear picture of who I was as a person. The things that I value, my beliefs, and how that all kind of interplays. And I think part of it, you talk about, first of all, you being willing, so you're coming in with an open posture, and that sort of entity that you have is faced with another entity, which is how someone else perceives you, or the reality, or there's a battle between kind of 2 things that's going on. And a part of the self-awareness journey for me has been to be okay with one of them dying. You know what I mean? Like one of them kind of, it's a bit dramatic, but I mean, it's one of them, they both can't coexist. That's why there's a conflict, you know what I mean? So I had to kind of wrap my head around this idea of, in my self-awareness journey, I'm going to have to butt up against something where there's a limit of my knowledge, the extent of my knowledge, and out there is this unknown world that is kind of encroaching upon me. And for me to really develop and grow, one of those things has to suffer. And one of those things, it's not a bad thing, I think it's just the reality of it. And I think that's kind of how I envisage yourself. And that's why a lot of people are conflict avoidant, because in and of themselves, they have that idea that I don't like the self-awareness journey doesn't even want to start, because they know in that conflict, then something's going to hit them in the face and be like, bang, deal with me, deal with this now. And no one wants to even start that journey because they're afraid that one of those things is going to die, and it could be something that they hold very true, and it's.
But it becomes a block too. Like that becomes the thing that prevents your progress or moving beyond that current experience of dissatisfaction in your life, if you allow that to exist. Like I sort of
it's a hindrance.
It's a hindrance. Like when I hear people talk about I don't like conflict, I hear I'm not comfortable opening myself up to vulnerability and communication, and I go, if you're not willing to do that, you're delaying your journey, like you're delaying your opportunity to grow.
Conflict delayed conflict denied is conflict delayed.
Right, something like that. Hey, so it's that whole premise of like I don't know a lot of people that actually enjoy that feeling of conflict or that feeling of discomfort in raising an issue like that, right? For me, I try and look beyond it. Like I probably wasn't always as good at this, but I guess as you grow a little bit wiser, hopefully grow a bit wiser as you get through life, you come back to that worthwhile, right? So you go, okay, there's going to be a feeling of discomfort by doing this. Will that be worthwhile or not? It's same as the converse, whereas, okay, I'm going to avoid that discomfort. Will that be worthwhile or not? And for me, I'm always like, well, I'd rather know. Like I'd rather address this now and have an opportunity to find out where I really stand with you or with you. And when you spoke about your friend in that way, I'm like, man, like there's like this kind of like your the value rises for me. I go, oh, cool, that's awesome. Like you've got someone that cares enough about you that is willing to share that with you rather than walk away. And then your value goes up because I go, well, you actually respect that. You're grateful for that because you know what that can mean for your relationship going forward. And like, just to give Ben a little bit of a pat on the back, but like, you know, this is why I love doing what we do with together, like with the adaptability movement as just mates, because like Ben is a very compassionate deliverer of feedback. And it's something that I try and do as well. But I've said this to you before, but like I really value the energy you bring to a conversation because you're able to deliver something that is from a place of care about something that is important in a way that we can grow from it. And so while there might be a little bit of anxiety about, oh, geez, what did I do wrong? Or I haven't actually met Ben's needs or delivered on my end of whatever it is that we're trying to do, I go, I'm so grateful for Ben that he was willing to say that because it means that we can actually go to another level in whatever we're sort of trying to achieve together.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It is. Yeah. It's really difficult because you have to let something go.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interpersonal relationship like you guys have, where it is a safe space. You're vulnerable. You can do these sort of things, and you have a lot of contact, and you can develop that. It doesn't make it any. It makes it easier. The process easier, but the effect is still tough, man. When you have to. When you have to kind of go through that.
It can still feel like a threat.
Yeah.
You're trying to make space for that.
Yeah.
And not take it personally to go, there's Ben, there's me, and then there's our relationship. And so if we're only getting our own needs met, it's going to be constant to and fro. It's going to be conditional, right? Whereas if we go, there is value to this, and we want to protect that and invest in that, then we start to go, what is it that I need that could be communicated better to help this? Like, what is it that Ben might want? How can I understand him and his position better so that we can grow this? And I think when you start to think about it as there's like three entities in a two-person relationship, then that can make things a little bit easier because it's not just about tit for tat. It's not like, oh, you took 2 biscuits, so I got to get the other 2 biscuits, or I did the washing up, so you have to mop the floors. Like it becomes, well, we're investing in something greater together. We understand the value of that, so now we're willing to invest. And that whole idea of delayed gratification sometimes going, well, it might be my time to invest a little bit more into something than what Ben is, but knowing that like Ben's always willing and able, it's just right at the moment there's something that's intervening on that, or there's something I could help him out with, that it'll come back full circle. But it's not about being keeping a ledger.
Yeah. I think it's, in a way, you're kind of bargaining with potential in a way, like you're really saying, or I feel like there's something here, it's cooking up and it's good. This has to kind of be put on the sideline for a while while I really go hunt this. Not everyone sees that, and it's difficult because like people obviously, I think the idea behind conflicts and the idea behind that a little bit of a struggle is that you're engaging with this conflict because you're aware that, or you have a belief that at the end of this, there's going to be something that's greater, right? Either I'm going to change, the situation's going to change, something's going to change for the benefit. And if you approach it like that, then you can actually enter it in a different context. But if you don't see that, or, if I don't see that there's something good here that's happening, it's going to be hard for me to really engage in a conflict. And I think conflict has got a negative connotation. Well, really all it is a tussle. It's an exchanging of ideas. There's a little bit of pressure and friction because you're trying to grow and expand that sort of boundary of knowledge and experience that you have. You have to kind of forego the comfortability now for something that is great, and you have no guarantee. You know what I mean? I think that's a reality of the situation. You can't predict the future.
Yeah, and it's often not until later on that you might get some feedback or something initially, and you could take offense to it, or you could like feel hurt by it initially, and you're like, oh, what, why did they say that? And then it's a week or two or a day or something later, and you go, all right, I can see what they're doing. They're actually just trying to make me better by giving me this. And it was uncomfortable and I didn't want to hear it, and it bruised my ego a little bit. But ultimately it's going to make me a better person because of how I respond to it. And it's that whole thing of like we control our own actions and our own responses to things. Like you can either, if someone cuts you off in traffic, you can either blow up at them and go, oh, what are they doing? Like, oh, and get angry and let it ruin the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Or you can go, oh, geez, that person's going really fast and cut me off. They must be in a hurry. Like, hope they have a good day. Like, and then it's just like there's two different ways you can respond to them, and someone might constantly let little things ruin their day by just harping on it and responding negatively and stuff. Whereas other people, those people who are like, this person's always positive. It's like, well, they just see something and they just respond to it in a way that's going to put them in a better space. And if they just let things turn them into a negative headspace.
So yeah, I'm learning a lot personally about managing feedback and communication in a way. I come from a kind of mentality that if I have something difficult to say, and I do say it in a way that maybe hits a little bit harsher than what someone else might, the reason I'm doing it that way is because I care about you enough to tell you this difficult news, right? But not everyone shares that same mentality. No. Someone does need a softer approach. Yeah. And I think for a lot of the times I was approaching, not necessarily feedback, but communication in general. Tell someone the harsh truth and they'll respect you for that because they appreciate that you're not sugarcoating it. It's a cultural thing. It comes from a cultural background that I have and how you communicate in that kind of world. But, you know, it's that sort of, do I look fat in this? Yes, you look fat. But, you know, someone doesn't necessarily... someone can be okay with that, but someone might not be okay with that. And that's something that I've been trying to realise is emotions they're just reactions to stimuli, right? But then there's a little pause, and then there's what you do about that. Yeah. And I think, you know, someone cuts you off in traffic, you can get a little bit antsy, but then you go out of the car and grab your shoe and throw it at the car, or like, do you pull the person out and start bashing them? Or no. So there is an action kind of point. There is a point where things switch beyond a visceral reaction to something that's more kind of calculated. Yeah. And I think I'm starting to understand that is a difference. There's something in there that is not necessarily cut and dry. I think for me, understanding that people respond to things in different ways and how they perceive things. You know, I might say, for example, Ben, I might say something really harsh to you. If I was down in the situation, I'd say, I don't want to do it your way. I think your way is stupid. You know, but to me, I'm thinking, oh, this person actually cares about me because they've gone out of their way to tell me something that is difficult. No one else was going to say this. Yeah. But this person's... That's not what everyone... No,
absolutely.
Yeah, I could take it the wrong way and be like, oh, stuff you, I'm going to do this anyway. Like,
then I've hurt your feelings and that was never my intention. Yeah.
But language is powerful, isn't it? And this is where I talk about like compassionate communication. Yeah. So it's like it's tailoring it to your audience. Like, so, you know, any one of the three of us like has probably grown into a space now where we appreciate the direct feedback. We still like it to be compassionate. Like, please don't call it me or it's stupid, like what we're talking about. Like, just say that I don't think that's going to work, right? But like we still kind of welcome it into it because we go, awesome, opportunity for growth, awesome, I can move beyond this current feeling. Yeah. Whereas someone else, like it needs to be gentler. Like it needs to be, we're not all accustomed to that. It becomes a threat, and if you're in this like threat model, like or experience, then it just becomes like this wound, like that has been inflicted upon you that someone else did to you, right? And when we get stuck in that, we become oppositional again. So when we talk about that third entity to a relationship, like that's the teamwork aspect. So if you're a team, you work together. If you're a team, you're on the same side. So then why on earth would you turn on each other? Because if you've allowed yourself to be vulnerable with each other, if you share stuff you don't use with anyone else, well then each of those people have a weapon to hurt you more than anyone else as well. Like the greatest damage can be done by your closest ally, not your greatest enemy.
Of course,
right? Yeah. And so then respecting that, because again, that grows more trust, it grows more belief in what that is possible for that team, and understanding that if we're under threat, we are much better equipped to overcome it side by side, back to back, than we are going, right, you know, just grabbing the swords and charging on forward and then being like, I got someone hit me from behind. Was that Ben? And then attacking him, realizing there was a sniper over in the back of the bloody hill. You know, that concept of like, you hear this particularly in relationships, right? Like
romantic ones.
Yeah, romantic relationships. Like it's, you know, business is one thing, but like when you put that that romantic emotion into it as well. Like, it can really hurt when someone says, okay, yeah, you do look fat. Okay, I actually like you better in the green dress. Like, there's different ways of delivering the same message, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about being dishonest. It's
Yeah.
just about giving feedback which is useful in a way that is well received.
Yeah.
Because we have different learning styles, we have different filters and sort of.
You're a different person.
Yeah, right.
A whole different experience of life. I think the personally, I'm learning this, and I'm kind of being a bit more nuanced in my approach to things, which is helping in relationships especially. But there is a third thing, and there are conflicting interests. There's my interests, there's your interests, and then there's the best interest of the relationship. Yeah. And you kind of gotta kind of feed the greater good.
Yeah.
And I think you have to reconcile what that looks like for you personally in your own life and how that fits in. Are you compromising your values by doing something like that? How much? What does that mean? And I was talking to someone the other day about expectations and boundaries, and that feeling of betrayal that someone gets is usually because a boundary's been overstepped and an expectation hasn't been met. And I think that was something that was really like kind of rung true for me personally. And I think it's important to kind of keep that in the front of mind, is that someone's worst fear is that the expectation is not being met. So how can I approach this situation with very clear, concise boundaries and expectations for this other person to engage in that allows my interests to be protected, their interests to be protected, and then us to actually, fish for this third thing and really like foster this third thing.
Can I add a layer to that? Because like when we talk about that third thing, like the greater good is something that still serves you.
Yeah.
And this is what I think there's a misconception here. Sometimes we go greater good is like can be a one size fits all, especially when you talk about a broader population.
Yeah.
When you're talking about like a relationship of two people, whether that be romantic or otherwise, like it's about we believe in this third entity because it serves us, and therefore that compromise is worthwhile.
Yeah.
If we find there's an imbalance, it's because it's not okay. There's me, Ben, then there's me and Ben and I's relationship.
Yeah.
If we find there's an imbalance there where actually it's not serving me because I've compromised too far, well then there's either got to be a recalibration or a reassessment of the value of that relationship. And I think, but giving that a chance in the first place to understand properly rather than just walk away. Like how often do you hear someone go, oh, we grew apart or they changed. And it's like, well, we all change. Yeah. I think like if we're not changing, then what are we here for? We talk about when we're early in our journey, we weren't very self-aware, and then we grew more self-awareness and added more value to our life. And so if we weren't changing, there'd be nothing to stimulate us. There'd be nothing to move towards. You have to have that hope for vision for something better. And so like it's just being aware that it's not just. You're not having to give up everything just to get a need met. You're making compromises because it adds more value to your life.
And it might not be immediate.
Yeah.
It might not be immediate. I think that's hard for people. Everyone talks about this day and age where you get things, instant gratification. But, I don't think people kind of understand the concept that, if you're in a romantic relationship, for example, and you really put time and effort into a relationship, it could serve you really, really well down the track. And you need to kind of believe that. You need to put your hope in that. It might not serve you in the immediate, it might be tough in the immediate. But do you see how this can build and develop into a really strong relationship that adds a lot of value to you later after doing all this work step by step? Kind of goes back to the idea of self-awareness. Like if you don't see value in being self-aware, then there's not really any way. You're not going to instigate that movement to go and actually seek it out. And it's the same thing with a relationship. If you feel like this relationship isn't really going anywhere, what chance am I to go and actually make meaningful change to try to improve this thing? I don't really think it's going to be good anyway.
It comes back to the willingness you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Because there has to be a willingness to invest in that from both parties.
Yeah.
That to me, that is the fundamental, necessary thing that has to coexist. If that doesn't coexist, then it just becomes this depletion on both ends of it. Because this person's needs aren't getting met because they're just expecting them to be met. And this people is so they're feeling drained. But then this person's feeling drained because they're given everything they got. They're trying to compensate for the lack of investment from that other person to be able to make that work. So we come back to mutual benefit. We talk about this a lot in the business, don't we? In terms of like whenever we bring a new relationship into the fold, or we enter into a new relationship with someone that we're working with or connecting with, there has to be, and maybe I'll let you explain it, but there has to be this concept of mutual benefit, which is...
Yeah, well, we always talk about the win-win-win in everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't serve, again, a relationship, whether there's however many parties in it, but it doesn't serve a relationship if it's always one or two people that are, or one or two things that are getting all the benefits from it. So and you need to make sure that everything that you're doing is that win-win-win, and that we're making sure that, okay, yes, like I'm getting what I need out of it, like Dan's getting what he needs out of it, and you're getting what you need out of it. It's filling us all and filling our cups up individually, and but then also helping, as we said, the greater good as well. So
it creates that circular economy.
Yeah.
So that flow of energy. So rather than there being, you come to me for a service, I deliver that service, you provide me payment for that service, we have a transaction.
Yeah.
And at the end of that transaction, we go our own ways. We lose that connection. Whereas if we go mutual benefit, you have a need, and then I have a need to earn sustenance for that need that I'm helping meet for you, well, then there's a flow. So it becomes a flow of energy rather than a flow of money or ego or time or whatever it is.
And in every transaction, I think if you do approach like a transaction, someone is always getting more out of the deal than the other person. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it's if you do kind of conduct yourself in a way that is very transactional, you're kind of admitting to the fact that either I'm getting swindled here or I'm getting more out. Or I'm swindling someone else, because that's the only way this transaction can happen. But I like that kind of win-win-win mentality. I think it comes down to, and this is something that I've kind of experienced, is that can only work when, I feel like that can only work when the individual that you're working with or the group that you're working with or whatever has a very clear understanding of the things that they need out of it.
Yeah.
I think if you're entering a relationship, like say for example a business relationship, and you say, oh, this is what I can do and this is what I can do, and you go, okay, cool, this seems like it's one of those win-win-wins, and it continues and the cycle keeps going. But then one person, because they didn't approach it with a clear understanding of what they needed, they don't feel like that thing is being met, but they didn't communicate that to you, so there's no way for you to know that. And then they develop resentment because they feel like they're getting swindled out of this thing. But then you're thinking, oh God, you come to the table, but you need to come up with a little bit of self-awareness to the table with what you need out of this, and then this can work. Yeah. But if you don't come to the table with this understanding and give me a blueprint of how we can help each other, and that extends. I was talking I think there's a huge benefit in conducting interpersonal relationships the same way that there's a lot of business relationships. I feel like there's a lot of benefit for that. And this is a little bit off topic, but kind of similar in a way, is if you have a business relationship with someone, you usually have some type of contingency plan, right? So let's say you're an investor and I've got a business. Say, this is my business model. This is how we're going to make a lot of money. And as an investor, or me, if I wasn't investing in anything, I'll say, all right, what is your contingency plan? What if step A doesn't work? And you go, oh, well, I've got this. So I've got this other option here that can also generate money. Okay, cool. What if that doesn't work? Oh, I've got this. Okay, cool. So if I'm investing in your business, I see that you've got A, B, C, and D. You've got contingency plans in case A doesn't work. Yeah. Brilliant. I think that's great. Now I can sort of invest in this knowing that my money is well protected, etc., etc. In interpersonal relationships, we never talk about when things go bad. And I think it's crazy because if I'm in a romantic relationship with someone, I think the conversation needs to be had, and I think there's a lot of value in having a conversation like, well, if one of us expectations or boundaries are overstepped, how are we going to deal with that? What is our plan B, C? You know, what is our contingency? How do you want me to act in that relationship? You know, in business we have laws and structures, ACCC, that controls kind of how we do stuff. But in interpersonal romantic relationships, there's an understanding that someone at some point is going to really offend the other person. They're not going to meet an expectation, for example. Why don't you ever talk about that instance happening from the start? Yeah. Wouldn't it be wise to be like, well, I'm going to enter in this relationship with you and I think this is great and I really want to see where this goes, but one of us is going to screw up here. It might be me, it might be you. How are we going to deal with that when it happens? You know, do you want me, do I need some time away? Are you willing to be able to give me a week to just go, a couple of days to just go and not speak to you for a while? Yeah. And then as a person, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I guess I have to be aware that that's going to happen, because there's no mandated law like there is in business to say that if you don't reach this particular expectation, you're going to get fined. In relationships, it's like, well,
But that's a good thing, right? Like, you get to write your own code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, why wouldn't
Set your own
you want to
expectations.
prepare for that and invest in that? Like, and like, I know, like, personally for me, like, I like to deal with stuff in that moment.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
don't let it hang around. Don't let it simmer for me. Like, it doesn't have to be like really confrontational. It just has to be like, what's our plan? Like, we're here. Like, let's be okay with that for now, and then what next? Whereas like my partner, for example, like, she needs time to process, and so for her it might be time out, and so it's like that delicate balance of like, how can you give me a little bit of what I need to go, you know, basically to go, we're okay, it's going to be right, I just need some time.
Yeah.
It's like, it might not even be about me.
Yeah.
It's, I need 5 minutes or 15 minutes or half an hour to myself,
Yeah.
so that then I can come back to this with the energy that's going to help us create like a result or something.
To move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if I hear that, what, instead of feeling threat because something's not addressed and I'm feeling like it's my fault or there's a problem, I can go, okay, like that, like I'm okay now, I can settle. Like, I know there's something to be dealt with, but there's an agreement, there's terms as to when we're going to come up back and address that, and in a way where I understand a bit more about it. So it's not this mystery now that says that I've, you know, made me feel like I've done something really bad, and I'm being punished emotionally via withdrawal of love. Because that's what it feels like to me. It feels like withdrawal of love. So we had to get those terms right.
Yeah.
And conversely, like, I need to be conscious of Kim, that she needs that. Like, if I'm going to like push for a result, that's just going to add to her feeling of overwhelm.
Yeah.
And there's no way she's going to have that energy to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's easy to go, I wish that person was more like me.
Yeah.
Right? Because we all just go, it'd be so much easier if they just like held that same mindset or value or whatever.
Yeah, if they want to sort it out, they want to sort it out now, and I want to sort it out now.
Yeah.
Perfect. Happy days.
But like, isn't the value in a relationship the diversity, the things that you bring for like, and you contribute towards each other, that's different to what you could do for yourself? Isn't that where some of that value accumulates, to say that, well, you know, yeah, okay, it could be easy to deal with that situation, but you know what, like, if I'm in a state of overwhelm and Kim's able to offer me a sense of calmness or give me that space because she knows the value in that space and all those sort of things, then there's a different perspective which I didn't hold myself, which then adds value to my experience as well. And so then you start to go, you can value it, you can have gratitude for that, rather than resenting that it's not the way that you expected or would have liked it to be on first instinct.
Yeah. I think if you even abstract that out to, for example, go back to that business relationship, I've got, you know, you provide a service and I've got this thing and I can't do it myself, but you can. So the best way to go about it is to create parameters where your needs are met and my needs are met in the business relationship, and you're going to expand my growth as a business and I'm going to expand your growth as a business. So if this is a relationship, for example, you say, well, I'm going to expand that ability to be a little bit more calm, or I'm going to expand that ability for your partner now to be, maybe I need to expand that ability to address things a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And you kind of, your scope and your kind of boundary of impact is kind of growing a little bit because of the established relationship, that third thing that you've come across. But that's just that's a perfect example of like something that happens quite a lot in business and in other different types of relationships, but you don't really carry it across to interpersonal romantic relationships. Even like friends, for example, you can just say, "Hey, look, mate, I love you as a friend, but I need a phone call at least once a week just to check up on me, and I expect the same from you." Someone goes, "Oh, okay, can we make it twice a week? You know, I'm a little bit more needy than you want." You go, "Okay, well, how about I call you and then we text during the week?" You know, and in that way, you feel like your needs are being met. The other person is kind of compromising, so you're expanding your boundary of maybe I don't get that 2 phone calls, but I get a phone call and a couple of texts. And this is a weird example, but it's kind of
it is, but it's not really, because again, like as you said, like with your story earlier about your friend, like we don't set those boundaries or those expectations of relationships, and it's like, oh well, I like to call every day, whereas this person doesn't like to call every day. They like to call. They don't like to call at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, as you said, how can we like meet in the middle somewhere so that both of us getting what we need, and therefore it's not like building that resentment and give and take and stuff. It's like I'm not having to compromise and sit on the phone every day going, oh, just shut up, I don't want to talk on the phone anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, well, I know that we've agreed on we'll talk every second day or something, and that's how it will work, type thing. So
to circle back, it's kind of a good advertisement to be self-aware, because if you're trying to sell someone self-awareness and someone's really struggling, I don't really feel like I need to do the work. Everyone says, do the work. Someone says, I don't really feel like I need to do the work. You go, all right, cool, this is an advertisement for it. If you do the work, those relationships right now that you're feeling like you're a little bit 1 foot in, 1 foot out, those are all going to get better. Because when you approach these relationships, you've done the self-awareness work, you're going to approach it with clear expectations and boundaries that someone else can adhere to. So it's a great advertisement. You go, oh, you know what, if I'm having shitty relationships, maybe it does benefit me to be self-aware. Because then every subsequent relationship that I'll enter into, I'll have a good understanding of what my needs are being met. Because right now I'm kind of wishy-washy and I don't really have expectations, it's easy for me to get offended. Because I've got an expectation that's not being communicated and that person has no idea of that expectation. And I feel like I'm being, kind of, not betrayed, but like you feel like you're not getting the best out of these things.
Yeah.
Perfect. Do some self-awareness work. Try to figure out what your needs are, where they're being met, where they're not being met. And then the next time you approach that relationship, maybe it's going to be better. You know what I mean? I think that people don't see, I was talking about this earlier, people don't see the linearity of the work. People see like it kind of meanders, like a kind of river type thing, but it's like, well, yeah, it does, because it's not like, there is a little bit of linearity in the sense that if you know this about yourself and it's a really well developed and really well thought out kind of concept that you've really worked a lot on, it's going to benefit you more in the future. That's not very clear to some people, but what we've spoken about today is a great understanding in the business relationship. That self-awareness comes in and you can approach someone and say, these expectations, can you meet them or not? Or where can we compromise? And if it is a romantic one, it's a good advertisement to say, well, you're going to become a better person out of it, you're going to get a better relationship, you're going to get a partner for life, you're going to great, do the work.
I'm going to go away and talk to all my friends and develop better relationships now. So set those expectations a bit more. So that's great.
So there's an interesting part to this. Like we obviously run men's work within the business as well. So it's not just the organisational stuff where it's very mixed gender. It's about men being with men in an environment where they can speak openly around other males. Yeah. So oftentimes, we might be more comfortable, speaking to a female, either a partner or a mother or something like that, but we're not prepared to show that same vulnerability next to another male because we feel that is a sign of weakness.
Huge issue, right?
And what we found is that we almost need to do a focus group of the women of the men that could benefit most from this, right? Because the people have this idea of what men's work is, and there's this aversion to it because it says, well, that's not me. That's for someone that's softer, not as masculine. They're maybe a bit hippie, or it could be any of those terms, right? Like you can pick any label you want, but really, it's an aversion to self-awareness. Yeah. It's an aversion to connecting and to being more open emotionally. And I don't mean you have to go on a deep dive and address your greatest fears and whatever, but just to be open and available to converse, to communicate like in an authentic way. And the thing, and we're still trying to work this out because we've been through that journey, and so we actually invite that into our lives. Like we want more of that, and we're trying to create, and I feel like we have created a really good environment for people to come into for the first time, which is a really low threat model. Like we talked about Ben's energy before, and we did this together, but we just try to make it somewhere that you feel safe, you feel welcome, you feel like you belong. It doesn't feel hard. You're not talking with a weight or a heaviness. You're just interacting with other guys, and in a way which then develops more trust. It develops more open communication, but we're not slamming it down your throat, right? So then, what would your advice be for someone that's sitting on that precipice, and maybe it's that they're in a relationship with it romantically, maybe they have kids or they don't, but there's this feeling of dissatisfaction, or there's this communication from their partner that I just don't feel like you're there. I don't feel like you're present, or that you're being open with me, or you're sharing what's really, really bothering you. And it's creating this disconnect, this separation of their team, like their partnership. Like what advice could you give someone in that situation?
Obviously, I'll always preface by saying I'm not an expert on this thing. I'm just going to speak about my experience.
We're just looking for perspective.
Yeah, perspective. I think it comes around that mentality. You said something there, like men approach this type of work like, oh, it's soft, or it's this, or it's that. I think everyone's concept of a man obviously is different, and it's based on a lot of different things culturally, your values and your beliefs, all that sort of stuff. But I think there's a universal understanding that a man is someone, and this sort of comes from this anthropological sense of things. Like a man is someone that goes out and does a hard thing. They hunt, and they come back and they bring the kind of the spoils. You know, everyone kind of shares in the spoils. But this concept of men are people that go through hardships for the benefit of a lot more people, right? It's the idea that you provide for the community, you provide for your family, right? I translate that more to, so in my self-awareness journey, the easy thing to do is to be not self-aware, right? Everyone thinks, to be self-aware, you have to come up against a lot of different obstacles personally as well, but you have to come up with a lot of different obstacles. Being told sometimes that you're, this is where you fall short. If it is interpersonal relationship, it's hard to hear that. Imagine a romantic partner telling you, like, I'm not happy in this. That's not a nice thing to hear, and that is a hardship that you have to face. For me, I translate that men going through hardship and then sharing the spoils mentality to this. Well, if being more self-aware is something that is hard, it's harder to do, but I can share the spoils with the people around me, then that's the more manly thing to do, right? That's the way that I kind of approach things. I think it's a values-based thing as well. Like, that's something that I really value, and I think your question is, how does someone that's maybe on the edge of wanting to see sustainable change in their relationships or in their business or whatever, I don't have all the answers, but I think it's a values-based thing for me. I really value that work that I do in helping everyone around me, right? If I'm better adjusted in myself, then everyone benefits. All my relationships are better, my professional work is better, everything kind of flourishes from that. And if you don't believe that, I guess you're always kind of, you're flogging a dead horse in a sense. I think there's enough evidence to show people, to explain to people that there is value in this. And in a way, I think the men's work that you have to do first and foremost is to try to just convince people that it's valuable, right? Like, that's the hardest part, and you guys know it is. And I think this is a big challenge, I think, for someone, especially someone that's kind of like entering academia as well. It's like, you do all this stuff and you have all this great knowledge, but how do you disseminate this knowledge in a way that kind of hits home? And I think that's a challenge that a lot of people have. Like, great communicators are people that can transfer ideas in a way that hits the same for me as it does for you, right? And the gravity of the idea is felt as well. Yeah. The men's thing is really tricky for me because it's so deeply rooted in, obviously, this sort of anthropological view of what a man is like, but then there's also layers of culture that kind of layer up on top of it. I'm pretty happy that this kind of this concept is changing a little bit. I come from a traditional African background, and African men are very traditional in the sense of they just provide. They're historically very emotionally distant. This is not case for everyone, but I'm just saying historically there's this idea of being distant and just providing for your kids and kind of doing the hard work, so then everyone can kind of be happy and healthy. And I think that I'm really happy with the culture that we have at the moment, especially here in Australia, which is a pretty progressive society. Is that, like, that idea of a man is being shifted away from that traditional norm into something that's a little bit more nuanced, right? A man is someone that can have a difficult conversation. A man is someone that deals with adversity well. A man is someone that, and it could be whatever you want, like however you shape it. But I'm happy that it's shifting. I think it's a values-based thing that's going to essentially get someone across the line. And I guess I don't know how you guys can tap in, because I feel like a man talking to a man. I don't know. What's your perspective? Do you think it hits different from a man talking to a man? Like, say, for example, your mate tells you something, or if your missus tells you something, or if your partner, I should say, because it might be same sex or whatever. But which one do you think hits a little bit?
I still think it depends on the
context,
how evolved that relationship is. Like, because if let's say, like, we have a relationship which is just it's very career orientated, right? So it's like we come in, we contribute on different things, we collaborate together, but we never really talk about personal things, like right? As opposed to a personal relationship, like a romantic relationship, where it's going to be more heavily weighted in that area. So, I mean, the way I think of it is kind of like, you almost need to help someone. You talked about values. You need to work out what they are with someone, because not everyone knows what they are. Yeah. Right. So if you're providing for something, you're providing because you believe that's your role. but you wouldn't provide for someone that you didn't care about at all.
Yeah.
So then you bring them back from that concept of what providing is and the reason why they're providing, which is because I care about my family, because I love my kids, I love my wife, right? It's okay, but how is your relationship with your kids and wife? Not great. I don't get time. I work late. I get up early. Wife feels like she's always like resentful when I get home. I don't get a kiss at the door. And it's like, how would life be different if you had those things? If you had a great relationship with your children where they were able to come to you and share things about stuff rather than hide stuff from you. Mm. If your wife was comfortable expressing her needs in a compassionate way so that you felt like you could be more effective with the energy you give to her to grow a better relationship. Because most people, I think, would be open to that idea of going, that is what I want.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so we've gone from this is what I feel like I have to do.
Yeah.
Is it getting me a result for what I now realise is what I want? No. And what does it mean? It means I carry resentment towards that because I'm actually not being fed with the thing that I really care about and really need.
Yeah.
So that sort of that value or values in your life.
It's an exercise in trying to get that person to realise what their value is.
Yeah.
And then the different vehicles to try to transmit that value. I think people really, I guess what provision is, and you think about it anthropologically, is that someone's going to go out into the wilderness and risk their life to provide you guys with sustenance, right? That's the sort of traditional, caveman type of view of things, right? But essentially what that is, if you really abstract it out, is I'm risking my life or I'm foregoing hardship and something that's really dangerous to try to provide for you and your family because I care about your well-being, right? So I think when you kind of go towards now that sort of more modern interpretation is providing is just a vehicle for you to show the value of care, that you care what your family or your partner or whatever, how they're doing, their well-being. There's different vehicles to show that care. Providing is one vehicle, but there's another vehicle. There's tons of other vehicles. If you try to distill that down into that idea of I'm doing this because I care, maybe get people across the line. I think there's probably a scope there to get partners on board and say, have you communicated to your husband how you'd want to be treated?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? What does it like? And I guess this really starts from the start of you probably should start at the start of your relationship when you're trying to figure out what your lifestyle is going to look like. You know what I mean? And that's something you need to do early. I'm not sure how to approach it in the now and when things are developed. But
it's that whole concept of when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago.
Yeah.
When's the next best time? Now.
You
can't. Well, my current understanding is you can't go back in time. But maybe I'm wrong. But we can live in that life of regret, or we can go, what is available to me right now? How can I adapt to this situation to find an opportunity or to find more value or more, satisfaction in life? So it really comes down to it. It comes down to quality of life.
Yeah.
Like if you're just going through the motions, doing what is expected of you, doing what you think you need to do, there's low satisfaction in that because you haven't actually taken responsibility for what it is that means something to you, what is worthwhile to you. You've gone, well, I'm just more willing to fit in, to default to this option because that will, I might get some feedback that says, you're an honourable guy, you're a great worker, you're a real grinder and you provide for your family and good on you. But on the inside, you're feeling like, but what for? Because I don't actually have a relationship with my kids. My wife, doesn't want to talk to me or doesn't want to, have that intimacy with me because we're on a different frequency, a totally different wavelength. And so, I don't know, I feel very fortunate and I say I feel fortunate because I feel fortunate and I'm aware of that and I'm willing to invest in that. And I see that a lot of men aren't at that stage yet. And I'm not saying that I'm at a better or more progressed, just that I've been able to identify something that I feel like works better for me.
Yeah. And
I hear this from my dad regularly when we have conversations because we try and share as interstate, so we try and share as much of stuff as we can about raising kids through photos and videos and calls and he expresses somewhat of a regret that he worked 3 jobs most of his life trying to provide for his family, but there was a cost to that. And the cost was that he was often not home, not around for the things that he now sees he would have liked to have enjoyed himself. And so what feels good, hearing that from him is like, first of all, I think, you know, Dad did the best job he could with the resources he had.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that I really value that he's contributed to my life. And I think he did a good job with the resource he had available to him. Right? But I also really appreciate the feedback he gives me on the way that we're raising kids, in that he really admires the connection that I have with our children and that we have with our children and we have with each other. And it goes like, in a lot of ways, I want to be a better provider because I feel that that's something I'm still trying to resolve. But at the same time, like there's feedback from someone that I trust that says you're on the right path. Like, you know, you've got more connection with what is of value to you and with your family, the people you care about, than what he maybe felt like he had. And then it's just about sort of then tidying up the rest of it to create balance.
Yeah, I think you're in a great position as well, because I feel like a lot of that kind of older generation of father I think that's a very common story. You know what I mean? It definitely rings true to me. My dad worked like a dog for basically his whole life for us kids, right? And I've got 2 other siblings, and it definitely rings true. I think it's a very common story of that particular generation. I think where we, and you personally as well, have a lot of power and a lot of influence is that it's difficult for it. I guess you're in a position where you can actually go against the grain, and there's opportunity for you to kind of invest backwards, because your dad didn't have that mentality you said about planting the tree. It's like, well, you can't really change that your dad's mentality 30 years ago, but you are in a position now that you've got a lot of tools and you've got a lot of knowledge through your experience. You know, what do you guys like? I don't know what you guys' conception of it, but it's almost like you're reversing it a little bit and trying to influence the generation before, because they didn't have the luxury of being, you know.
Well, it's continuing to invest in that, because the thing that gives me great satisfaction, it's not like an ego thing where I go, oh, yeah, great, I'm doing a good job. It's actually, not only is he seeing value in that, but he's feeling value from it. So he's going, he's not just like, he's not living in regret necessarily. There's a little bit of that, but it's like the way he communicates his connection with his grandkids, like that fills me with joy and fills me with like, because I go, well, that's amazing. Because if you didn't feel that necessarily with your 5 children, like, or you felt at different levels, well, now you can see that now you're really feeling the value of that, and that's only going to add to the value of our relationship, of his relationship with his other sons. Like, we're all boys, so it's not a sexist thing. It's just that you know, and so you've got like a family of predominantly males, like, right? So, and that becomes that was, I guess, the thing that our image of what a male is, and so then it's kind of then you know, develop your own perceptions of that, like move beyond like, you know, constraints of that type of like idea and concept of what is a male, and to go, well, actually, what do I want, like where do I feel there is meaning and value in life, and therefore what do I need to invest in to achieve that?
I think there's a lot of benefits to be taken out from that kind of old school mentality as well. I
don't feel absolutely.
Like we should throw the baby out with the bathwater in that situation.
No way, for sure.
That concept of foregoing immediate pleasure for you personally for the greater good of your family or whatever, I think that's definitely something that is true. I think it'll be true for time, you know, in memoriam. But like, I think you have to think about at what cost. Yeah, because if I work, you know, day and night, but I don't have a relationship with my kids, it's like, well, can I work a little bit less and have at least some relationship with my kids? Like, where's the balance here now?
Yeah.
So I don't think this mentality of like guys should never work and be at home and
of course.
But like, is there maybe a middle ground is there maybe a middle ground that we can find where like you can have those sort of old school mentalities, but there is some new school stuff. You know, I think it's a tricky one, because you're trying to rewrite the generation from a position of disadvantage, because they've gone through it and it's been successul. Like, here you are now, then it obviously worked. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's hard to tell someone that something needs to be changed when it's kind of still working.
And I think that's the thing, is that we always think we can do things better, and lots of people have regrets about things they did and things they didn't do and all this sort of stuff. But at the same time, you got to say like, well, I'm here now, and like, this is where I am, and it's because of the things that I've done. And yes, I made mistakes along the way, some positive, some negative things, like, but it makes us who we are. And so many people just think like that they want to be something else or someone else or whatever, and it's taking away the joy of actually going, well, I'm me, and I like who I am, I like what I do in terms of my life, and I don't want to have to always try and be someone else. I want to be me and just embrace myself, and the people who tend to be the happiest are the ones who do that, are the ones that can just be satisfied with who they are, what they've got, and doesn't necessarily need to, I don't know, they have heaps of money, heaps of all these cars, all these friends, all these, like, I got what I need that satisfies me without, I don't need any more than that. Just being happy with that.
It's hard to find that though, eh?
It is hard.
I really struggle with that idea of like being worthy of just being satisfied, you know, with the current situation.
That's the whole thing about like, I'll be happy when, like, and it's like, and it's like, I'll be happy when this business is making $10 million a year, and I'll be living on a yacht and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, but why can't you be happy now? And that's the one thing that I've learned over the last few years, is just to enjoy that process, enjoy the journey. And it's like, I love what we do, and I love how we do it, and we want to, there's goals and things we want to get to, but I'm not going to be happy when I achieve that goal. I'm going to just be happy with the journey and what we're doing now. So
I guess I think this is probably another a good kind of tactic that you use probably without even knowing it. But if you framed what your happiness is, right?
Yeah.
You framed kind of what your contentment is, and a lot of people don't have that framed. A lot of people don't have a very clear, well-defined picture of what happiness looks like, what the content looks like, and if you don't have that kind of steering where you're going, then you're always kind of behind the eight ball. And I think that's something that I've struggled with as well. Is like, I might not necessarily be happy at the moment, but at the same time, I don't really have a clear definition of what happy is. So
it's about setting those expectations, because I say like expectation, the difference between your expectations and your reality is where your happiness lies. Because if you have these high expectations and you never achieve them, then you're never going to be happy. But if you have expectations and you're able to meet those expectations, then it's going to bring you the joy. So
I think I read someone say something about, like, obviously there's a lot of stuff going on in Russia and Ukraine, and they're talking about the Russian and Ukrainian kind of culture and stuff, and they're talking about the difference between how people from that part of the world think about happiness, and they don't think about it in terms of product and output and things like that. They think about it in terms of meaning. And I thought, wow, that really rattled me. That really threw me for a spin, because I was like, maybe we're thinking about it all wrong, about like, I need to be happy when I get this, or when I produce this, or when I have this. What if it's about just having a meaning, a deep, kind of really like rich, something that you can really hang your hat on, and that's the thing that kind of guides all your decisions in your life. And that's that, they have cold winters and it's dark, and maybe it's just it's a product of being from that part of the world. But I think it's something you can totally take from that. Maybe happiness isn't necessarily about A, B, C, D. Maybe it's about, this is my thing. This is my meaning in my life, and everything that I do is for this thing. And instead of fishing for X, Y, Z, maybe I should just try to look internally and find out what my meaning is, and then try to align everything around that.
Yeah, I always come back to, like, you can say it in different ways, but it's like it's meaning, it's purpose, it's fulfillment, it's worthwhile. Like, what is your worthwhile?
Yeah.
And invest in that. Like, to me, that is absolutely, like, I remember reading a formative book, like The Happiness Trap by Dr. Russ Harris back in, mid-20s or something. And like, I've read a lot of, I've always invested in personal development stuff. I really love that challenge of sort of growing and being a more open and connected person and that sort of stuff. But one of the big focuses on that was self-awareness. It was on identifying your values. And so those things there was 3 distinct sections of the book, and the last section was the goal setting. And it's like, all that stuff is where you need to be first, before you can then meaningfully chase something like that you want to achieve, because that's a thing that you do. This is who you are, and this is how you experience life. And that was huge for me, because to that point, I just lived a goal-based life. And so if I achieved it, I was happy. If I didn't achieve it, then I was not depressed, but I felt crappy. And so, like, I think, to kind of summarize what we've been speaking about here today, that self-awareness, like, it's worthwhile investing in that, and worthwhile or purpose or meaning is why we do it. So, like, where do those two things apply for you in life, and how do they work together to then be able to overcome challenges or discomfort to be able to grow the things that you really care about in life.
Yeah, it's hard to move in a direction when you're not sure which direction to go, right? And I think your meaning is what kind of guides you. Otherwise, you're just doing everything and anything, right? And you know, all the self-awareness in the world is not going to help you if you've not really got a clear picture understanding of that.
Yeah. No, and I think what I heard from you initially is that willingness to start and be open to being more self-aware. And it is like things like habits and building in little things and stuff, and being more aware of your habits, and you can actually go to the adaptabilitymovement.com.au/habits, and we have a PDF there that's just about identifying your habits and what habits do you have that are helpful, what are unhelpful, and what habits are neutral. So it's a great way. It's a great starting point as well to just again have a bit more willingness to be aware and sort of understand what you're doing and put it down on paper in front of you, so then you can go, oh, okay, yep, I actually realise that I've got way more things in the unhelpful habit thing than I do in the helpful one. How can I start to then shift that? So,
and are those habits in alignment with what you care about? So look, we've nearly ticked up an hour and a half. So it's been an awesome conversation. Cliff, appreciate you coming on and sort of sharing that with our audience and with us. Like, the thing that we love about this is we grow through this process as well. Like, you've got a perspective, you've got an experience, you've got value, and we appreciate it, man. Like, thanks for being here.
It was great. I can't believe that time's gone so fast. But I appreciate you guys having me on, and do it again sometime.
Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
I don't really do much.
You got LinkedIn.
Yeah, I got LinkedIn. Yeah. If you wanna reach out, LinkedIn's probably the best way to do it. Clifford, Clifford. Last name's Maina, Maina.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for coming on, man.
No worries. Thanks, guys.